Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordan and welcome to part 3 in this little vlog series I'm doing, reading some of my favorite booktubers' favorite books of 2024. The first 2 episodes in this series are already up. First episode I focused on friends that I have like medium similar reading tastes to. Episode 2 was focused on some of my booktube idols, people I absolutely love watching. Again, with kind of the assumption that I have medium similar reading tastes to, but I am so excited for today's episode because I am focusing on some bookish friends who, in my opinion, I have really similar tastes to. And I'm so excited and so hopeful that I'm going to find some new all-time favorite books in this vlog. I hope I'm not jinxing myself, but as important as it is, in my opinion, to get outside of my comfort zone and try books that I'm not sure how I feel about them, I also think a great benefit of kind of honing your tastes and finding booktubers and content creators that you do align with is that you can take their recommendations and have a little bit more trust and high expectations that because they loved them, you're going to love them too. So that's what I'm excited to put to the test today. We'll see how that works out for me. I have 3 friends that I will be focusing on in this video. For some of them, I couldn't pick just one book to try, so I'm reading 2 of their favorites. Again, because our tastes align and they talked so highly of these books, I can't not try them. So let's get right on into the booktubers that I am featuring, the books that were on their favorites lists, and what I will be reading in this video. I do take this as a chance to gush about some of my favorite creators, so if you're not already following them, make sure you do that with the links below. All right, we are starting with Kelsey from Essentially Booked. Kelsey, I am so glad that I found her and her videos. I actually have met Kelsey in person. We both lived in Iowa for a time. She still lives there. I used to live there and I moved away. And I met her in person. She's exactly the same in person as she is online, but I love following her content. She reads very similarly to me when it comes to genres. We both enjoy realistic fiction. We read a lot of historical fiction, a lot of contemporary fiction, sometimes literary. I would say she leans a little bit more literary than I do, but I do enjoy to pick up literary fiction here and there where I can. She also puts a huge priority on reading diversely, and almost every book that Kelsey talks about loving, I find myself wanting to read, wanting to pick up, and often when I do pick them up, I also really enjoy them. I also really appreciate Kelsey's online presence, not just on YouTube, but also on Instagram and on Threads. She's very vocal. She's very firm in her convictions, and I do find that her and I align on our morals, our values, our political beliefs. And because she has a formal education and a background in law, she is just so well-spoken, knows what she believes in, knows what she's talking about, qualified to make the statements that she does, and really passionate about sharing information with the people around her. So I really admire that in Kelsey. That's something I would love to develop more in myself, but I consider myself more in the learning portion or period of my life right now. I'm trying to absorb as much information and as many different, perspectives and things as I can and use those things to do good in the future. But like I said, Kelsey is just very outspoken with that type of information, and I really, really appreciate that about her. So let's talk about the books that were on her favorites list from last year that I will be reading today. The first one is called Democracy Awakening by Heather Cox Richardson. This is a nonfiction book about democracy, as you would assume. I believe this author is a historian and a writer who writes often about the political state of affairs in the United States. And because I know that Kelsey aligns with me politically, I'm taking this recommendation from her really strongly and assuming that because she loved it, I will also enjoy it and probably learn a lot from it. So this one maybe is a little bit of a stretch outside my comfort zone because it's not a topic that I would say I've read a lot about. I haven't read a lot of political nonfiction, but I do have goals to read more nonfiction books in general this year, and I'm sure I will learn and agree with a lot in this book specifically. I also have a fiction book that I want to read off of Kelsey's favorites, and it's All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. I have read Razorblade Tears by this author and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. This is his newest book. I know he has another one coming out this year. I'm not sure when it's releasing, but this one came out, was it last year? I never got around to it around its publication and have always been meaning to go back and pick it up. So I'm so glad that today is the day to do that. I believe this is somewhat of a mystery thriller book. I believe it follows a black sheriff, and I don't know much more about it, but Kelsey loved it. I've loved this author. I'm sure I am also going to love this book. All right, the next booktuber that I'm featuring is Lena from Lena's Bookshelf. She is one of my besties. Again, I have met her in person multiple times. I love her personality and her energy, and we do align a lot in, again, the genres of books that we pick up. Lena is very into historical fiction, as am I. I'd say she reads even more in that genre than I do. She has some specific tastes of like subgenres and niches. For example, asylum books are something that she likes to read, but also that's a little bit what her career and interests relate to, like that behavioral and mental health topic. So again, I learn a lot from Lena in her book reviews, and often when she rates highly and reviews positively a book, I often pick it up and have similar thoughts to her. Now, when it comes to her 2024 favorites, I had already read a lot of the books that she mentioned. One that I will be reading for this video, I'm not so sure how this is gonna go because it's Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose. Both myself and Lena read a lot of mystery thrillers. I'm not sure how closely our tastes align when it comes to mystery thrillers, more because right now I'm just in the middle of a, I don't know, existential crisis when it comes to mystery thrillers. Somewhat of a slump, I don't know. I feel like I'm a little bit extra nitpicky and just not enjoying mystery thrillers right now, and I'm just curious to read this book through that lens. I believe Lena said this one is just kind of a fun and wild ride. I have read one other Geneva Rose book in the past, and I remember that one being similar. Like, it's over the top, it's unbelievable. You can't go into it expecting it to make a lot of sense. You just kind of have to let go of the reins, let it take you for a ride, and hopefully you are entertained and surprised in the process. So that's what I'm gonna try going into this book with in terms of mindset. And hopefully I end up surprisingly enjoying it as much as Elena did, enough to put it on her favorites list. Okay, the third and final person that I am featuring in this reading vlog is my friend named Jenny, who actually does not have a booktube channel. She does have a bookstagram, and her username is AccioBiblio. I'll link it below, but I had to include Jenny because she is probably the single human that I have the overall closest reading taste to. And it's very exciting to make that realization and basically know that every book she rates highly, I'm also going to enjoy, and vice versa. I know she's picked up a number of my recommendations and also loved them, and it's just so fun being that aligned with somebody. Not only does Jenny read in a range of genres as I do, she also, again, prioritizes diverse perspectives and strong sense of like social commentary, but she specifically enjoys sci-fi books and books that are rooted in reality but have a very, very tiny sort of speculative or sci-fi element to them. That is something very specifically that I don't align with a lot of people on. I follow plenty of people who like strong sci-fi in like highly scientific worlds, and also people who read sci-fi fantasy. And then I also follow a lot of people who like realistic stories with like a touch of magic, and that's not my preferred thing. I really prefer when it's just a tiny little sense of sci-fi. And Jenny also loves that. She is the person I go to when I have a book like that I rated 5 stars and I want to recommend. And whenever she finds a book that has that little specific thing in it, sometimes she recommends them to me specifically. And almost everything that I've picked up on Jenny's recommendation, I have not just enjoyed, but loved. So I hope that's enough gushing about Jenny, and I hope she's okay with me sharing her Instagram. But again, I chose 2 books from her favorites list that I am just dying to try. So the first one is Only This Beautiful Moment by Abdi Nazamian. Not sure exactly how to pronounce that, and I'll probably find it out. I believe this is a historical fiction book. It looks like it might be young adult. And again, Jenny and I just really align on young adult fiction. I believe this is set outside of the US. I'm not sure. I'll give you all the details as I actually read this book, but all I know is Jenny read it. She loved it. She put it in her top 5 of 2024. Therefore, I am reading it. The other favorite of Jenny's that I will also be reading, I think, is also a young adult historical fiction, strong social commentary type book called The Color of a Lie by Kim Johnson. I know Jenny has recommended this author to me before. I don't remember if it's always been this book or other books in her backlist, but I've had her on my list to read forever. So excited to finally be doing that with this book. And if I love it as much as Jenny did, then I'll definitely go back and check out more from her. But these 2 books I'm just dying to try, excited to get a little bit of a young adult fix. And like I said, hopefully about to find some new all-time favorite books. That would be ideal, but I know I'm in for some treats. So with that, I'm going to get to reading. I will be back once I have finished each book, and in each update, I'll tell you a little bit more about the synopses of these books. I'll give you my full thoughts and reviews, and I'll let you know if I recommend them to you or if I have anything more specific to say about them. So, gonna get to reading. I'll be back with my next update. Okay, my friends, I have my first update for this vlog because I just read Democracy Awakening by Heather Cox Richardson. Whew, this book. I don't feel smart enough to understand everything that this book covers. It spans so much history. And that is the beauty in it, is that there's so much information in here that I could probably reread this book several more times and each time pick up on things that I either didn't catch the first time or just help solidify in my memory all of the different events of history that Heather Cox Richardson covers. And it's a tough one because it spans so much time and so many incidents in history that it kind of starts to read like a textbook. And that's not to say that she doesn't do a good job narrating us through these events, because she does. And also I listened to the audiobook of this book and she reads it herself, and in her voice you can hear her passion for this topic and for the messages she's trying to get through. But at the end of the day, it's a lot, and it almost makes the reader become desensitized to it, which is horrible. Like, the point is that so much has happened to bring us to where we are today when it comes to our current government and situation in the United States that we need to be aware and frankly outraged about in order to take the actions to correct it. But it's hard not to feel a little bit hopeless when it's all just stacked on top of each other and delivered in one package. Maybe I also did myself a little bit of a disservice by reading it so quickly. Not only do I think I should reread this book in the future, but I also think it would serve me to read it slowly and over time and take it in kind of digestible increments, because it's very clear that this author knows what she's talking about. She's got a really good grasp on history and how the events of history have shaped us and brought us to where we're at today. And her whole point is that, you know, hope is not lost. There are seeds and threads of true democracy, or what the founding fathers envisioned for the United States' version of democracy, and how it has the best interest of our people at heart. And we can get back to that. We can get back to the roots and the intentions of the founding fathers, but also make updates to account for the reality of where the United States is at now, the size, the fact that we're bipartisan. She has great ideas and great knowledge. It's just a little bit hard to know, what am I supposed to do with all of this? So again, I feel like I'm on one hand not really smart enough to comprehend everything in here. On the other hand, I feel like I don't quite have enough power or immediate actionable steps to take to bring us to a better place. But this is also just one resource and one, you know, piece of reading that I will take on this topic. And also I know that Heather Cox Richardson is not done after this book. I actually have heard a lot about her and the work she does on a daily basis, and she has like a newsletter that she writes every single day that outlines what is happening and what we can do about it. So I know that there's also continued action to be taken. I don't really know where to land on this book. And what I should do is go back and watch Kelsey's video, her favorites video, where she talked about this book, because I want to refresh my memory on her thoughts about it and what specifically she said and loved about it. Also, Kelsey is somebody who I really admire for her, you know, political beliefs and activism. So I want to hear her thoughts one more time, and then I'll come back and talk more about it. Okay, I just rewatched it, and oh man, Kelsey said that she read this book during the week of the election, and so it was a very hopeful book for her to read, which is so interesting and heartbreaking to know how everything turned out, obviously. But I understand what she's saying, that this book, it's twofold. Like, it shows how we got to such a dire place, even though this book was published in 2023, so well before the current situation we're in now. It still has so much relevant information, but also it gives hope to tell us that, like Kelsey said, our democracy was built to withstand challenges and to make sure that there are checks and balances. We're in a really extreme situation right now where those checks and balances are really being challenged, and we're gonna see how well they hold up. But again, the system was built to account for those challenges over time. So it does provide hope that we will come out of this, hopefully with minimal damage to our people and our systems. But with information like this being out there, hopefully we can encourage everyone to, you know, keep building up their knowledge, taking action where they can, and hopefully things will get better. So I'm hopeful with Kelsey. Really interesting for me to read this book now versus when she read it ahead of the election. I can't imagine how reading this book will continue to change over time as our current situation changes. That is an interesting part about a book like this. The timeliness of it kind of matters, and I wonder how long it will be relevant still, because things are just changing so quickly and so drastically right now. So again, it's very important to continue the education beyond just this book. But now that I've been exposed to this author as a person, I do think she will be a resource I continue going to into the future to keep getting, you know, political information and action from. So I think I'm gonna land at 4 stars. It's not a 5-star book for me. Maybe that's unfair to the author and it's more just like the situation we're in politically. But I really respect this book. I think I will come back to it in the future, and I would totally recommend it to anyone who thinks they want kind of that cumulative history of our country, what has brought us to here, and a little bit of what we can expect in the future. So, all right, my battery is blinking at me, so I'm gonna go get into the next book. I'll be back with my next reading update. Okay, my friends, I have got 2 updates for you because I've actually sped on through 2 books for this vlog, and so we'll just do the updates all in one clip instead of me filming them in 2 different clips and changing clothes and pretending they're on 2 different days. Let's start with Only This Beautiful Moment by Abdi Nazemian. Is that actually how it's pronounced? Let me verify.
Hi, my name is Abdi Nazemian. The first syllable of my first name is ab, like the abs you work out when you do stomach crunches. The second syllable is D, like D-Light, who are one of my favorite 90s bands. My last name is pronounced differently by everyone in my family, but I pronounce it Nazemian.
Okay, that's funny. Everyone in his family pronounces it differently, but Abdi Nazemian. This is a young adult historical fiction book, I think is the best descriptor of it, but it is a multi-generational family story, and the youngest generation is set pretty much in present day. It looks like the description has it set in 2019, and this book was published in 2023. That is notable because there are a lot of references to President Trump in his first term, which in 2019 would have been where the world was at. And so let's see, so that present day 2019, we follow our main character, who is a boy. He's a teenager, he is gay, and he lives in Los Angeles. And he is from an Iranian family. He has a grandfather in Iran who, at the time in this book, is dying. So our main character goes on a trip to visit his grandfather, and it's very interesting because he, being a gay teen in Los Angeles, has a very specific life view, and him and his friends around him and his boyfriend, they all have very specific thoughts about countries that are more oppressive towards LGBTQ people, Iran being one of those countries. So there are big feelings about our main character going back to Iran and kind of the risk he's putting himself in by doing that. Then we also follow one generation back, so our main character's father, who grew up in Iran but was sent to the United States for reasons. And then we also follow one more generation back, so our main character's grandfather, who also lived in the US and had a very interesting life around Hollywood. So basically each character and each generation within this family has very strong ties, not only to America, but also to Iran. And we see basically the conflicting political viewpoints of these 2 countries and how these individuals are trying to navigate finding themselves, learning who they are, and growing up in the context of wherever they are. And this book was so good and so interesting. I am infamously a little bit critical. I don't know if it's critical or just picky about multi-generational stories. They are a type of book that are so popular right now, but for some reason I often have a lot of trouble connecting to them. This did not have any of the problems that I normally have with multi-generational stories. I think it might be because each section of this book and the chapters of this book, they rotate between the characters, but they're long enough that I really got sucked in and fully invested to every single perspective. And each of the generations in this family, they didn't feel less accessible or approachable the further back in time they went. They still all felt very relevant and contemporary, even though they were set in different times. And I consider that to be a good thing because, like I said, I was so invested in all of them. And it just reiterated the fact that a lot of the problems we have as human beings, they're not new. There's always somebody that we can relate to. There's always somebody who has been in our shoes before or very similar shoes, even if it feels like we're having, new problems. And certainly we have new challenges that come about over time, but the root of humanity is the same. And like everybody's just looking for love and acceptance and safety. And so the details of that change over time, but I love how this book conveyed that deep down, we are all the same. I also love how the experiences of these three generations of men reflected each other, and you could see such strong similarities between them, which makes sense because they are family members. They are ancestors and descendants of each other, but it's also in a lot of ways that they wouldn't know themselves. And we as the reader are seeing similarities that they don't realize they have, and that kind of illuminate the idea that like we should spend more time getting to know our ancestors as much as we can. Because again, a lot of times they've walked through scenarios that you are walking through and they can help give advice and give perspective. But also, like, we so often make assumptions about the people around us that can be super untrue. And it can really damage relationships before they even have a chance to flourish, because we don't have that curiosity or that instinct or want to connect, and get to a super deep level and learn about the childhoods and pasts of the people that we come from. At least that's what I personally took away from this book, and it was so beautiful. It was so impactful. It was emotional at times, and definitely I would put out content warnings, trigger warnings around like the oppression and hate crimes towards LGBTQ individuals, homophobia, things like that, and also some references towards just general like war times. There's talk of President Trump being a buffoon. So like it's very clearly not pro-Trump, but it does talk about him, and I think that could be triggering for some people. So know that going in. But this was everything I was expecting it to be based on Ginny's review and based on what I know about Ginny as a person and her reading tastes and what she looks for in fictional books. I knew this was going to be so well written and just so impactful with its messaging. I didn't even have to know what the book was about to know that I would enjoy it and it would resonate with me, so I love that. To be honest, I finished this a few days ago when I'm filming this clip, and I initially rated it 4 stars on Goodreads, and I'm not sure why. I'm not sure I can vocalize what held it back from being a 5-star book from me. It's just a feeling I have, and so like that's all I can give you. It's like it didn't reach that 5-star feeling for me, but I can't convey anything that was wrong with it or any reason why it didn't give me that 5-star feeling. So I hope that I can just recommend it, and I hope it hits and impacts other readers who have similar tastes to me, because I thought it was well worth a read. And for being someone who doesn't love multi-generational family stories, this was so good despite that fact. And it's pretty much everything that I wish all multi-generational stories were. So it was so good. Probably like a 4.5-star rating if I'm being very nitpicky about it. So extremely strong. All right, then the next book I have to talk about is Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose. This is one of Lena's favorite books from 2024. And I think I mentioned in the intro that, I don't know, I've been in a weird place with thrillers lately. And so I want to preface my review of this book with that caveat to say that maybe I'm not in the best space right now to be reading and reviewing thrillers because I am just so often underwhelmed by them. And so any problems I have with this book might just be a me problem. And if you are a thriller lover, then maybe I'm not the best reviewer at this time to give you thriller recommendations. I would say probably go watch Lena's favorites video and get her full thoughts on this book if you are, like I said, a thriller lover and you want a positive review of this book. But I unfortunately gave this 2 stars. Let's talk about what it's about. So it's about these siblings. There are 3 siblings and their mother has just passed away. And actually the very first scene in this book, or part of this book, is following one of the main characters who is a woman who has been taking care of her mother over time, and she's with her as she passes away. And that's definitely, I think, intended to be a pretty emotional scene. I want to say Lena and or my friend Jessie, who read this book, said that they cried or felt like crying at that early point in the book. And I think that could potentially also be given as a trigger warning that like death of a parent is not only a topic in this book, but it's a literal scene. You read about it happening. So if that's going to bother you, then know that before you pick it up. But that's also the relevant, basically inciting incident for this book, because then the rest of this book is the 3 siblings discovering some secrets that their mom held, which they uncover as they're going through the process of settling their mother's affairs and like going through her stuff and her house and all of that. Specifically, they find a VHS tape, which makes sense for the cover of this book, why it is the cover. They come across this tape that shows their father doing something that they had no idea he was involved in, that they had no idea he did, and sets off the chain of events of them discovering things about actually both of their parents. So yeah, I guess what didn't work for me in this book is just that premise in general. It didn't really interest me all that much. And I don't know why. I think that's just my overall disconnect with thrillers right now, is that like siblings uncovering secrets about their parents is just not interesting to me. And specifically the types of secrets that they are uncovering, I don't know, it just didn't work for me. It didn't feel surprising. It didn't feel believable. I guess I kind of needed to be on one end of that spectrum, like either be believable and realistic and something that someone could realistically find themselves in a situation of, or like a kidnapping or a break-in or something, you know, something realistic, or be so outlandish that it's entertaining to read because you can't really picture it happening to you, but something about it is compelling enough to make you want to get to the end and find out all of the conclusions and reasons and things like that. This book, I think, just fell somewhere in the middle of that for me, to where I wasn't really interested for either of those reasons, and therefore it just kind of fell flat. There, I guess, are a few different reveals that come about in this book, and like, I think the big one, or what's supposed to be the big one, I definitely predicted, or like it ran through my head as a possibility. And for me, that's not something I prefer when reading thrillers. I would rather be, you know, fully surprised, even if it's a twist that comes completely out of left field. I prefer that to something that I could reasonably expect is going to happen or have as a possibility. So yeah, for all of those reasons, this just didn't work for me. But once again, I don't fault Lena for having this on her favorites list. And I also don't think this is the most representative type of book that me and her would have in common. I probably would have preferred to read a historical fiction book, but if I remember correctly, all of the historical fiction that she had on her favorites list, I've already read. So again, that goes to show that we have similar tastes, because I've read and enjoyed her favorite historical fictions, and I will continue to pick up her recommendations in that genre. But when it comes to mystery thrillers, I guess we don't align perfectly, but also I'm just not in a space right now to be enjoying them in general. So I will use that to inform my future reading decisions. I'm so glad that I got to, you know, hype up Lena and feature her in this video, but I'm sorry that my taste in this book did not align with yours. All right, with that, the heat in my house just kicked on, so I guess with that, it's time to get on to reading the next book. So I will do that, and I'll come back with my next update when I have it. Okay friends, I am back with my final update for this video. Again, was it my intention to combine all of these updates together? answer, no. Would I prefer to give each book its moment and own individual review? Yes. Would I even prefer to give like midway updates through these books? Also yes, but that is just not the phase of life we're in right now. Things are busy. I can't even remember if I've talked about that in this video or not, but I'm officially back at work after maternity leave and I'm just feeling, you know, very busy. My headspace is catching back up on work-related things, so there's not a whole lot of extra space here for the extra content and things that I'm doing. So yes, that means that I go longer and longer between these video updates, and I'm sorry about it. I also am pretty sure this is the same like background that I've had for this whole video and all of my checkpoints, but this is where I spend the majority of my days, here in my office at my desk. And while I would love to move around my house and give you more variety to look at, again, it's just not really in the cards when it comes to my like planning and mental capacity. I'm just gonna put the camera up and talk where I'm at. But I do have to give you my final update because I finished 2 books, the final 2 books for this video. And first I want to talk about All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. This was one of Kelsey's favorite books of 2024, which makes total sense. This is the second book that I've read from this author. I also read Razorblade Tears and I really enjoyed that one. And this one felt very similar. It also, I mean, it has a completely different plot, but I did enjoy being back in this author's writing because it is just so, I want to say gritty, but it's just real and raw and emotional, and it just gets right to those emotional moments. This book is, I guess I would consider it a mystery, and it is a dark, dark mystery. We follow this man. Our main character is a sheriff, and he's a Black man. And at the very beginning of the book, he is responding to an incident where there is a shooter at a school. And this scene was so difficult to read, extremely emotional, huge content warning, of course, for a school shooting, and it is very on page. We read about this sheriff responding to the call and being on the scene and having his guys basically try to stop this event from happening or catch the shooter before he takes too many lives. It's very difficult to read. But then the story goes into basically solving the mystery of why this student did what he did and basically how a bunch of different people in this town are all connected, and it gets very dark. It stays in a very, very dark place throughout this whole book. I think the correct content warnings would be like pedophilia and gross sexual content related to children. That stuff is not on page, but it is referenced in, you know, the past of some of these characters. And that's the vibe of kind of what's being dug up about various characters in this book, which maybe even mentioning that might be considered a spoiler warning for some people, but I'm on my channel. This is my book review. I am of the belief that I would rather give the trigger warning and prevent someone from reading something that they don't want to read and preventing that harm from being done to readers, rather than trying to protect people who think that general content warnings when it comes to mystery thrillers are spoilers. Nobody asked, but that's my opinion on that. So my opinion on this book, yeah, it was really hard to read, and those topics are not my favorite things to read in books. For the most part, I can usually stomach them if there's a point, and I do think this book had a point. I think it makes several good points on several different topics. I think S.A. Cosby has a lot to say, and he says it very well. So I can respect kind of the ends justifying the means when it comes to some of that really disturbing content. That being said, did I enjoy my reading experience? Not really. It had me feeling pretty down about just a lot of what happened, but again, that's the point. It's supposed to hit you hard, and the sad fact is that a lot of this is reality, and that monsters exist in real life, and pretending it doesn't exist doesn't help anyone either. So I do find value in essentially making myself uncomfortable to get through some of these disturbing subject matter type books in order to have the conversations about how to fix it, how to move on from that, how to use systems and power for good. I don't know that I have those answers, but I think that is what I got out of this book. So I rated it 3 stars. I just don't know that it's the type of book that I would really actively recommend to people. And I think that's why I'm held back from rating it higher. I think that mystery thrillers with social commentary are worth reading. They're hard to find, so I like to recommend them when I can find them. But I probably would think of other books that I would recommend over this book or before this book if I was trying to promote that certain social commentary. I guess I would most recommend this to anyone who, for one, knows that they can handle this really dark type of subject matter, who also wants that social commentary in their mystery thrillers, and enjoys S.A. Cosby's type of writing. And if you haven't read him before, again, just the very kind of direct to the point, not beating around the bush, getting right to that dark material, having kind of that gritty substance to the writing that just makes you feel in it and makes you feel all of the emotions while going through the book. I feel like I'm not sure if that's the best review or description of this book, but yeah. Okay, let's get to the other book that I need to update you on, which is the final book for this video, and it's The Color of a Lie by Kim Johnson. This is a historical fiction book, but for the most part, it actually feels very contemporary. But it is set in 1955, and it follows a main character named Calvin, who is a teenage boy. And at the very start of this book, his family is moving out of Chicago to a new neighborhood, and they're basically moving from a Black neighborhood in Chicago to a white neighborhood more in the suburbs. And Calvin is a white passing Black teen. So when they move to this new suburb, his parents basically tell him not to tell anybody that he is any portion Black, but just to act like a white boy and make it so that anybody new that he meets thinks he is a white person. And this book is really interesting. Again, it felt very contemporary feeling. Other than when a few key events happen, they reminded me that we were set in the past. One of them is the murder of Emmett Till, which is a real thing that happened, and the second is Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat for a white person on a bus. Those both happen within this story. But let's see, where am I going with this? The majority of this book is about our main character passing as white and basically just kind of narrating how his life is different in this new environment and with people assuming he's white compared to his life before in Chicago being, you know, a partially Black boy. And for me, the book shared the experience that we all know to be true, which is that people are treated differently when they either appear different or are known to be different. But it just kind of colors that perspective even more vividly, which I guess is a testament to the title of the book and kind of the point of the book. But I think the point was really just to put you in the head of somebody in this, living this experience, which obviously for me is not an experience that I've had. So it just offers me a glimpse into that type of perspective so that I can have more empathy. And that is always something that I value in books. When it came to my personal enjoyment of this book, it felt very introspective. We were just very much in the head of this teenage boy, which I've said on my channel before, teenage boy points of view are not my favorite POVs to be in. You know, they're just not very mature. This main character is definitely more mature than your typical white teenage boy would be because he's gone through some stuff. He's grappling with some really difficult moral questions and sort of issues and identity issues and questions that certainly are making him like grow up and grow into his sense of self faster than other people not having this type of experience would have to. But yeah, it just felt very, I guess, slow and introspective for a lot of this book, which is not my personal favorite pace of story either. I will say towards the very end of this book, it does pick up a lot in the action, and it's because, you know, things really escalate and it's not like a fun, lighthearted type of action. It gets very serious and action-packed. And I would say I enjoyed that part of the book the most. It was the most interesting to read, but also had the most impact on me, I would say. And I would say for this one, I also am gonna give it 3 stars, which again feels a little bit harsh. I just think it's a matter of personal taste. but overall I think the book did send the message that it wanted to send. I think I went through the experiences that the author intended the reader to go through, and I appreciate that a lot. I do definitely want to check out more from this author because I think if she writes a plot and a main character that I'm a little bit more interested in, then I will fall even more in love with her writing and her books. So I'm definitely planning to look into her other books that are already published and keep an eye on any future releases of hers. What I do know is that I love all of the people that I've mentioned in this video, and even though I don't think I had any 5 stars, I will 100% continue taking these people's recommendations and hopefully find some more favorites that I have actually in common with them. If you have reading tastes that are similar to mine at all, then please go check out all of these people, follow them on YouTube and or Instagram, and hopefully you will also find some favorites that align with them. But I think that is all that I have for this video. So please let me know if you think I should continue any more videos in this video series. If there are any YouTubers or anyone that you want to know if I have favorites in common with, or you think I should take recommendations from. I do really like this series and type of video for spreading the love to some of my favorite creators because I've got a lot. Let me know if you've also read any of the books that I read in this video, if you had similar thoughts to me, or if you disagree, let's discuss. If you haven't read them, let me know if I convinced you to pick any of them up. And other than that, I don't think I have anything else. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.